Okay, so I have taken this biology paper, this IGCSE paper, to be discussed during our session. This is the first paper that you will be sitting for, and this has both MCQs and sort of like indirect questions where they ask short answers from you, right? Yeah. So this is quite an easy paper because you can see the MCQs are directly being asked when compared to the second paper. Let's see how you can easily attempt this paper. And do ask me your doubts in the middle. If you face anything that means if you didn't understand me, you can always ask me. Right. So in the first question, you can see that they're saying lactobacillus is a type of bacterium used to make the yogurt, right? This lactobacillus bacterium is a very famous example in your textbook as well, right? So this lactobacillus, it's a prokaryote. Bacteria means it's a prokaryote. What do you mean by a prokaryote? Prokaryote mean it doesn't have an organized nucleus. No organized nucleus. That means the DNA is just lying inside the cytoplasm, right? It's not surrounded by a membrane. It's just lying inside the cytoplasm. You can see this DNA is just lying inside the cytoplasm. There is nothing covering it. So this is a prokaryotic cellular organization. Eukaryotic cellular organization means, right? Eukaryotic means it has a proper nucleus in it. For example, let's take the animal cells, the plant cells, right? And the fungi, right? All these cells, they have a proper nucleus. But go to the prokaryotic cells, like the bacterial, like the cyanobacterial. You don't know about cyanobacteria, but there is a type of bacterium called cyanobacteria as well. All these types of organisms, they don't have a nucleus. They are in a region, that means their DNA, their genetic material is inside a region called the nucleoid, right? This area where there it is, it's called as the nucleoid, right? It's also out of your syllabus for the moment, right? But since I'm explaining the theory, I'll be bringing up some out of syllabus points and I'll be mentioning that they're out of syllabus, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's go through this diagram that they have given us. So it's a typical prokaryotic cell. There is nothing special like lactobacillus bacterium. You can see the cell wall is there. You know the cell wall, it's used to protect the cell, right? But not all the organisms have a cell wall. You know, especially us, this animal cell. Does it has a cell wall? No, you can't see any cell wall, right? There's no cell wall around that. And take a look at the plant cell, right? The plant cell do have a cell wall around it. You can see that, right? Yes, the yeast cells, for example, the fungal cells, right? Yeast is an example of fungi, right? Kingdom fungi. So yeast, they also have a cell wall, but animal cells, we don't have a cell wall. So the protection of cell wall is not only for, the function of cell wall is not only for protection. There is another function. They allow something called turgidity, right? Turgidity. That means they can take, that means any cell taking water from outside, right? You know, water goes into the cell by a process called osmosis. Yes, right? So osmosis means movement of water molecules from a region of what? High concentration, right? That means water molecules are in a region of high concentration. When they are moving to a region of low concentration, down a water potential gradient, you call it as osmosis. And this is a passive process. Yes, this is a passive process. It does not require any energy. That's how all the cells in our body, all the cells in this world take in water, right? And do you know when they take in this water, the cell membrane swells up, right? The cell swells up. And when this cell swells up, it hits on this cell wall, right? It hits on this cell wall. Can you see there are tiny spaces over here? These spaces are also going to be filled, right? These tiny spaces will disappear and they will become complete like this. That's what you call a cell is becoming a turgid cell. But it doesn't, but when it comes to animal cells, our cells don't need a cell wall for that. Our cell has a very big vacuole, right? They can maintain the turgidity, right? I'm not saying that, not a very big vacuole. We do have very, very small vesicles. So plant cells have a very big vacuole. So our cells, they don't need those things to maintain turgidity, right? They don't need a cell wall to maintain the turgidity because our cells, that means these cells are inside animals. Animals are complex beings, right? They're very complex. So they have systems. For example, our body has a homeostatic system. Homeostatic system means when something increases or decreases, we try to bring that parameter back into the normal level. So let's assume that the osmotic concentration, that means we are eating a lot of fast food and the salt concentration in our body increases, right? So if it increases, our body knows how to take it back into the normal level, right? Either that means they will send impulses to our brain to drink more water or else to excrete, right? This is how they control that. Anyways, because of that, because we have a complex regulatory systems, our cells do not have a cell wall. But all the other organisms like plants, yeast, the fungi, right? They have these cell walls because they don't have a brain to think, right? That means the cells that they are inside, that means the organism that they are inside, those organisms don't have a brain to think, right? They don't have a brain to control the homeostatic processes, right? Now let's go to this. They're asking what is the function of ribosomes. So that was just a touch-up theory. Let's get directly into the question. What is the function of ribosomes? Now, ribosomes are these tiny structures, right? Tiny dot-like structures, which is present in almost any cell, right? It's present in prokaryotic cellular organizations, in eukaryotic cellular organization. These ribosomes have a very important function. That is, they carry out the protein synthesis, right? They carry out protein synthesis. That means proteins are synthesized by them, right? So it's like this, amino acids, proteins, the subunit is amino acid, right? Several amino acids gather around the ribosome like this, and they create a polypeptide chain. A polypeptide chain means a protein, okay? So it creates a polypeptide chain. Okay, so that's how a protein is created. Later when we go into, that means if we go into detail, there is a process called translation, transcription, which happens inside the nucleus as well as in the cytoplasm. That's how proteins are synthesized. But now I'm not going to explain that because that's too much of detail. But this is the basic thing. In ribosomes only, the proteins are synthesized, right? So they have given us 4 answers. Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast, right? It takes place in this, this looks like a mitochondria. It takes place in the chloroplast. Chloroplast is a biconcave disc, just like the red blood cell. That means it's an elongated biconcave disc. Red blood cell is just a normal spherical biconcave disc. The chloroplast, it's sort of elongated, right? It's elongated, and also it also has double membranate. You don't need to know the intracellular structures or the that means ultrastructure of the organelles. That's not in your syllabus, right? You just need to know the parts, that means the parts of the cells, right? That is what is inside your syllabus. You'll be learning about those in your A levels, right? So you can see photosynthesis takes place in your chloroplast. And protein synthesis, it takes place in the ribosomes. Where does respiration take place? Do you know the powerhouse of our cell, right? Yes, the mitochondria, right? The mitochondria looks like this, and here only the ATP is generated, right? ATP means it is the universal energy carrier, right? We have a currency to trade, right? Just likewise, there is a currency in these living organisms to carry the energy, right? And that is ATP. So ATP is generated inside the mitochondria. And storage of cell sap means it stores some pigments, right? Cell pigments, sugars, amino acids, right? All these are stored in part of the cell called as the cell vacuole. But you can't really see a cell vacuole in prokaryotic organizations. Do you know why? In prokaryotic organization, there are no structures bounded by a membrane. No structures are bounded by a membrane. In eukaryotic cellular organizations only, you have structures bounded by a membrane. Cell vacuole, cell vacuole is bounded by a membrane, right? So cell vacuole is definitely not present in this lactobacillus. Why? Because lactobacillus is a bacterium. Bacteria means it has a prokaryotic cellular organization. So therefore, the correct answer for this question will be B, protein synthesis. Right. Let's move on to the next question. You can see which row of the table gives the components that are found in all bacteria and in all eukaryotic cells. Right. I think it's better to go with each column that they have given. Remember, bacteria means prokaryotic organization. Right? So cytoplasm, right? Cytoplasm, it's present in any type of cell. If you take any living cell, right? Not dead cells, because if you take a xylem, xylem is the cell which transports. Xylem cell is the cell which forms the which transports water, right? Which forms the xylem vessel elements and which transport water and minerals in plants, right? That is what you call as the that is what you call as the xylem, right? Xylem is a dead cell. And do you have any questions?
No, it's clear.
Okay, so xylem is a dead cell and it does not have a cytoplasm. But if you take any living eukaryotic cell, right? Living eukaryotic cell, they do have a cytoplasm, right? You also can see cell surface membrane. Cell surface membrane is almost present in any type of cell, right? If you take any type of cell membrane, you can see that. Not just that, if you see this cell wall, is it present in all eukaryotic cells? No. Because all eukaryotic cells means it includes what? It includes animals as well, because because animals, plants, fungi all come under eukaryotic cells. So here cell wall, they say it's present in all eukaryotic cells. No, it is present in bacterial cells. It is present in plants. It is present in fungi, but not in animal cells. Therefore, the correct answer would be the B1, right? Correct answer would be the B1. Next question, they're asking, lactobacillus cells do not burst when placed in distilled water. Okay, so now I must say this. Now, when you attempt questions like this, right, where they have given 3 marks, they're expecting you to write 3 points, right? They're expecting you to write 3 points. In the marking scheme, they're giving you 3 points. Sometimes they're giving you more than 3 points in the marking scheme. So if you have written either any of the 3 points that is given in the marking scheme, you get that mark, right? Okay. So lactobacillus cells, they do not burst. So if you take a look at the lactobacillus cell, you can see that they have a cell wall, cell membrane, right? All these things are there. Then if you take a look at the red blood cell, right? I'll just now take, okay, this is just a typical animal cell, but if you take a red blood cell, it also looks, it's similar to a typical animal cell, but it doesn't have a nucleus. The reason why it doesn't have a nucleus is because it can pack lot of what? Lot of hemoglobin. Yes, lot of hemoglobin molecules into this cell, right? Because of that, it doesn't have any nucleus, doesn't have any mitochondria, right? Now you might wonder, now where does it gets its energy from if it doesn't have mitochondria? Any cell should have mitochondria inside them. They get, the red blood cell gets the energy from anaerobic respiration. That's why they live only for 120 days, right? They can't live long because they carry out anaerobic respiration. Yes, only 120 days. And do you know, it's since it's an animal cell, they don't have a cell wall. But lactobacillus, lactobacillus, we saw that it has a cell wall, right? The lactobacillus had a cell wall. So the answer should actually, that means the answer should be something regarding this presence of cell wall, because presence of cell wall only deals with this bursting and not, that means whether the cell would burst or not. For example, let's take this. I'll take a plant cell, right? And I'll take an animal cell, right? I'm keeping them in a pure, that means I'm keeping them in a, container of distilled water or pure water. And you know, water will enter in by osmosis, right? That is the process. Water enters in by osmosis, and this plant cell will become bigger than it already is. And this animal cell will also become bigger, right? The animal cell will also become bigger. But at one point, do you know, the animal cell will keep on getting bigger and bigger like this, right? And at one point it will burst, right? It can burst. It's dangerous, right? That is why in biology they say it's not good to drink too much of water. Right now, when we were like, there is a thing, you need to drink sufficient amount of water, but there is also a thing like this, that you should not drink excess amount of water. The reason is these body cells can burst and it could be fatal as well, right? But there is a process regulating this. Like I told you, homeostasis, the osmoregulation process can control this, but up to a certain limit. So we should also be careful, right? Anyways, let's get into the plant cell. You know, they will also get a bit bigger, but their expansion is limited. Do you know why? That is because they have a cell wall outside, right? This cell wall is rigid, it is strong, it will restrain this growth, right? It won't allow this cell to expand that much, but it will become very turgid, right? It will have a turgid structure. But our animal cells, they would definitely burst. So the answer for this should include something regarding the cell wall. Then you can get 1 point, right? If you have included something about the cell wall, you can get 1 point. And the other thing that you can include is this water entering by osmosis, right? Water entering by osmosis. If you have written that one also, you can get around like 2 points, because water enters to both lactobacillus as well as red blood cells, right? So if you explain this process of osmosis a bit, you can get those 2 points, right? You can get 1 point for explaining that cell wall is present in the lactobacillus and the cell wall is not present in the red blood cell. If I was a student, this is how I construct my answer, right? You can also write down the answer if you have a paper. Lactobacillus, right? Lactobacillus has a cell wall. While red blood cells don't. Red blood cells don't. Right? That is 1 point. And then you can write down, don't write it in the point form, write it in one complete form, because it's okay, it depends on you. If you wish to write it in point form, you can. They won't cut any marks from you. It's up to you, right? Then you can write down water enters the cell, water enters the cell by osmosis into both. It's better to write water enters both the cells by osmosis, because
Yeah.
sometimes in the marking scheme I saw before I made my review for this paper, I saw in the marking scheme, right? You have, that means whenever you're studying, you have to be a bit considerate about the marking scheme as well, right?
Yeah.
They have given, that means they have not given marks if you didn't write, if you wrote that means water does not enter the lactobacillus. If you have written something like water doesn't enter the lactobacillus, you won't get any marks, right? Because water enters the lactobacillus. The reason is the cell wall is present and it prevents the cell from bursting in the plant cell, in the bacterial cell, right? So it's better to write water enters both the cells by osmosis, right? Both the cells by osmosis from a higher water potential to a lower water potential, right? Higher water potential to a lower water potential. Then in the third point, they don't, now these are the 2 points. You get 3 marks for writing this because there are 3 points inside it. But if I was a student, I would give a small conclusion as well, because now, you know, this is sort of like, that means when you see this, it's sort of like an answer taken from the marking scheme, right? That means this is like a marking scheme answer. For a student, you need to explain it to the examiner, right? That means as a student, you need to explain this to the examiner. So at the end, I'm not writing much, right? You can write down the lactobacillus does not, the red blood cells burst because they don't have a cell wall, and lactobacillus does not burst because they have a cell wall. If you explain that, if you give that conclusion, it's clear for the examiner as well, right? Okay, so that's how you construct an answer for a question like this. Let's move on to the next part, right?
I have a question.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
You want to take a screenshot?
No, I just wanted to ask if, suppose if you write vice versa, would they like consider that, or would they cut marks?
Vice versa in the sense you write red blood, that means I didn't understand you.
As in if I write the red blood cells burst because they don't have a cell wall, and write vice versa, for lactobacillus.
No, they would give you marks. If you have content inside, that means if you have this cell wall, if you have the words osmosis, right? If you wrote it in any way, that means it doesn't matter. You can explain it, you can explain through the point of red blood cells. Doesn't matter, right? Okay, are you clear with that?
Yes.
All right, let's go for the next question. Describe how lactobacillus bacteria produce yogurt from milk. Now, this is a beautiful process, right? If you take the lactobacillus, I'll show the note later, but first I'll explain that to you, right?
Yeah.
First of all, lactobacillus, this bacteria, right? It's a very famous bacteria. This lactobacillus bacteria, it can convert, right? It can convert the lactose, right? Lactose is a sugar in the milk. Now you know about glucose, you know about sucrose, right? For example, glucose is present in normal starchy materials that we eat, and even sucrose is present in the sugar. Milk, the milk that you drink also has a sugar, a carbohydrate in it, right? It has a carbohydrate in it. This carbohydrate is the lactose sugar, right? It has the lactose sugar. This lactobacillus bacteria can actually convert this lactose sugar into an acid called lactic acid. They do this because this lactobacillus bacterium, they undergo anaerobic respiration, right? Or fermentation. Another word for anaerobic respiration is fermentation. During this process, they use lactose as the substrate, right? They use lactose as the substrate and they convert it into lactic acid. Remember, you don't use any oxygen over here, because if oxygen is there, then no anaerobic respiration would take place. Yeah, then aerobic respiration would take place. right? So we need to maintain anaerobic conditions. So no air is given in. Lactose is converted into lactic acid. You know this lactic acid means it has a low pH, right? Low pH. It has a low pH value. This low pH value can convert the milk, right? This low pH value converts the milk into the yogurt. That means milk started to coagulate, right? That means in this pH, very low pH, there are conditions that means the proteins get denatured. Denatured, now you might have, that means you might worry about this word denatured. Denatured means these proteins have a specific structure. Do you know there are proteins like there are proteins in the primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and finally the quaternary structure. So these proteins, they have different structures like this, right? So these stuff, that means if you apply high heat, right, or else if you apply varying pH levels, if you change their pH, their structures can change, right? The structures can change. For example, if you take the egg, right, and if you take a raw egg and then if you crack it and then you make an omelette or something, you can see the egg white quickly changes into a rubbery format, right? Due to the high heat, the egg white, which is present in the liquid format, quickly turns into a rubbery texture. Why is that? The proteins have changed, their structures have changed, or simply the proteins have denatured. Their original form degenerates. In that sense, you call it denatured. Degenerates, denatured, right? It creates another sort of protein, right? So actually this milk also in this low pH value, the proteins get denatured and the milk start to coagulate, right? The milk start to coagulate and turns into yogurt. After the yogurt is formed, you can add different flavors, you can add the preservatives you like, right? And then you can eat it. Do you know there is another thing? This low pH value that is present, right? It is also good for the yogurt because at low pH levels, microorganisms do not easily grow, right? If you take a milk, it's easily contaminated, right? Milk, if you keep it outside, that means if you open it and also if you put it inside the refrigerator, it quickly gets contaminated, right? But yogurt isn't like that. It doesn't undergo quick contamination when compared to milk. That is because yogurt has a low pH value, right? Milk, that means low pH value means it's not a favorable condition for the growth of microorganisms. But the pH value of the milk, it is a suitable environment for the pathway of the microorganism. So that is another advantage you should know in this production of yogurt. But here, as an answer, you don't have to write that because they're asking something else from us, right? So let's see how we can construct the answer for this question, right? You can see it also has given us 3 marks. That means we should include 3 points, right? So they're asking, you're there, right? Describe how lactobacillus bacteria produce yogurt from milk. The first point that you have to write is they carry out fermentation of what? Of lactose, right? Because lactose is the substrate, right? The lactose sugar is the substrate. So you can write down they carry out fermentation of lactose. They carry out fermentation of lactose. That is your very first point. Then your next point will be, right? Lactose get converted into lactic acid, right? During this process, lactose get converted into lactic acid. And your third answer is due to this lactic acid, right? Due to the formation of lactic acid, the proteins coagulate. The proteins in the milk denature, right? The proteins in the milk denature and the milk start to coagulate. And the milk start to coagulate and form yogurt. The milk start to coagulate and form yogurt, right? So this is the complete answer for such a question, right? So 3 points, I have easily categorized the 3 points. If you write this answer, you get 3 out of 3 for that question, right? So I have taken, do you have any questions?
I know.
All right. So you can see I have taken the note, right? This note, especially about this industrial fermenter. Now you do this in mass production, right? We don't do this to make a yogurt inside our kitchen, right? We do this to make yogurt as a mass production, right? So in this case, they use fermenters, right? Fermenters to do this. These are big tanks, right? Big tanks like this, right? So you can see this is a typical industrial fermenter. Here they have said that the air is sent in, but remember this is not the yogurt fermenter, right? This is just a typical one. So in our yogurt fermentation process, we don't send any air in. So yeah, they have summarized this process. Let's just read it to get an understanding. Before we start everything, all the equipment should be sterilized, right? Because otherwise microorganisms, now we are doing this to create something for us to eat, right? So we need to make sure that the equipment should be sterilized. And milk is heated to 72 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. Actually, this is called pasteurization. For your general knowledge, I'm telling you, there are 3 types of pasteurization. HT, LT, and UHT. You might have seen this ultra high temperature in the normal milk packets that you drink. This UHT wording is there, right? So this is high temperature, high time. This is high temperature, short time, HTST, low temperature, long time, and this is ultra high temperature. So here they are using high temperature, short time pasteurization, right? And you can see first the milk is cool. Otherwise, if you add the lactobacillus, this lactobacillus would also die. That means they would get denatured. Because in the lactobacillus also they have proteins, right? So if you add them for a high temperature like 72 degrees Celsius, they would also get denatured. So you should first allow the milk to get cooled, then only you're adding the lactobacillus, right? Then you can see the milk is incubated at around 40 degrees Celsius in a fermenter, and then here only the bacteria is grown, right? Inside this only the bacteria and the milk, that means the bacteria and the milk mixture is there, and the bacteria, the suitable conditions for the growth of bacteria is also allowed inside this fermenter. And bacteria, bacteria, if I'm too fast for you, you can let me know. If I'm too slow also, you can let me know, right? Here the bacteria will break down the lactose to lactic acid. In the sense, it will ferment the lactose to lactic acid. And you know, lactic acid means high acidic conditions. High acidic conditions means it will denature the protein inside the milk, right? The protein inside the milk is actually casein, right? Casein. This will get denatured, right? Because of that only, this milk will start to coagulate and it will give us yogurt. So after the yogurt is thickened, you can add flavoring, colorants, or else preservatives, right? And you can keep it for a long time. So this is the simple process of yogurt production. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, here they have shown some seeds called lentils, right? And lentils looks like dal. You know, red lentils means dal, right? Lentils are a good source of protein and are often eaten as a part of a balanced diet. Here they're asking us how lentils are transported from the mouth, right? From our mouth, this is our mouth, and this is our stomach, right? So they're asking how they are being transported. They are asking the process, or they are asking the mechanism that they are using. You might have heard about this. Yes, you might have heard about this. Peristalsis, right? Peristalsis. What is this peristalsis? It's a rhythmic contraction. That means this esophagus, it contracts rhythmically, right? There is a rhythmic contraction which push this food, right? Which push this food further down until it reaches our stomach, right? So basically, if you take a look at the esophagus, there is a rhythmic contraction, right? Expected here they are expecting you to write the word peristalsis and explain what peristalsis is. That's what they're expecting from you.
Yes.
So in any future paper, if they ask you how food is being transported to the stomach, or how food is being transported through the esophagus, or what happens to the food, that means what happens to the food in between the mouth and the stomach, you should have an idea that they're wanting the answer peristalsis from you, right?
Yeah.
So first you have to write that it is peristalsis, and the definition of peristalsis you can write down like this. If you have a notebook, you can write it down.
Yeah.
The involuntary contractions and relaxations, the involuntary contractions and relaxations of muscles in the digestive tract. The involuntary contractions and relaxations of muscles in the digestive tract, okay? In the digestive tract that moves the food along the alimentary canal, right? That moves the food along the alimentary canal. That moves the food along the alimentary canal, right? Yep. Alimentary canal means actually the start, that means the place where our digestive tract starts, which is the mouth, and where it ends, which is the anus, right? So the tract from here to here, it's referred to as the alimentary canal, right? Or else you can call it the digestive tract as well. But esophagus means this short part of this alimentary canal connecting the mouth and the stomach, okay? Right. If you have any doubts, you can always ask. Now, the recommended daily amount of a nutrient is the mass of that nutrient required by an individual each day. Yes, if you take the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fats, right, all these are required by us in a certain amount. Then only we can have a healthy growth, especially during our childhood. We need to eat these things in the right amount as a balanced diet. Then only we will have a good, proper nutrition, right? So you can see, you can see that they have given us some nutrients, and also they have given what is the percentage of the recommended daily amount provided by 50 grams of lentils, right? That means in 50 grams of lentils, how much of the needed RDA we can get, right? Actually, the needed RDA should be 100% in our body. For example, if it is fat, the needed RDA of fat should be 100%, but we get only 1%, right? From the 50 grams of lentils. That means lentils is not a good source of fat, right? That means if you want to take in more fats to your body, you should not eat lentils, right? You should eat something else. But if you're a person looking for carbohydrates, you can get around like 11% of carbohydrates from this 50 grams of lentils. But still, it's also not enough, right? That means to get 100%, usually we are not only eating 50 grams of lentils, we are eating all the other stuff as well along with the lentils. So maybe we'll get the required concentrations from the other food that we are eating. But if we consider just the 50 grams of lentils that we are eating for a day, it's not enough for us, right? And you can see proteins, we get 22%. You can see from all the other nutrients, lentils are rich in proteins. That means we can get a higher percentage of proteins by eating lentils. And vitamin C, we get around like 2%. Calcium also, we get around like 4%. Let's read and see. Let's read and see. Give one component of a balanced diet that is not shown in the table. Here, they're not referring to lentils. They're just telling us just one component which is there in the balanced diet, which is not included in this nutrient. So we have a lot, right? We have fiber. You know, fiber is a nutrient, right? But it's not included in this table. And also water. We need water for a balanced diet. So water should also be there, and it's not included. Not just that. How about the other vitamins? Now, they have only told about, vitamin D, vitamin A, right? You can write anything that you like. Vitamin K, vitamin, vitamin D, A, E, K, right? Vitamin B, you can write anything that you like, right? And also the minerals. So on the only mineral that they have given is calcium. How about iron, right? You can write down iron as a calcium, and you can write down magnesium as a calcium. You can write down phosphorus. Phosphorus as a mineral. Sorry, not as calcium, as a mineral, right? You can write these things down. So you can write any of these things, and you get 1 mark for that question. Now, here they're saying lentils do not contain large amounts of vitamin C and calcium. Yes, that is evident from the table, right? Not much amount of vitamin C, calcium. So what will happen? What is the long-term effect? What will happen if we did not have enough vitamin C or calcium in our body? Simply they're asking, by the long-term effect of shortage means they're asking the deficiency, right? The deficiency of not having vitamin C and calcium. Sorry, the deficiency of vitamin C and calcium. What is that? Vitamin C, if you don't have vitamin C, you get this condition where your gums bleed, right? The gums bleed, and not just that, also your skin is pale, right? Your skin is pale and your skin is dry. And this condition is referred to as scurvy, right? This condition is referred to as scurvy. So scurvy means bleeding of gums. Scurvy means bleeding of gums, stunted growth. You have very poor growth. If you don't have vitamin C, you have very poor growth. Not just that, do you know this vitamin C? There is a protein called collagen in our skin, right? Just for extra knowledge, we have a protein called collagen in our skin. The collagen is a protein, and these molecules are helpful in maintaining our elasticity. Vitamin C is the substance which binds these collagen proteins together. So without vitamin C, we won't have any elasticity in our skin, right? Therefore, we will have a dry skin. Another feature of scurvy is having dry skin, right? So the answers that you can write down is, you can write down scurvy, and you can write down the skin does not heal. That means okay, you can write down either scurvy, or you can write down the skin does not heal. Assume you have wounds in your body. Yes. For example, like a diabetes person, if you take a diabetes person, that person, if that person has wounds around his or her body, you know, they take a long time to heal. Just likewise, a person with scurvy also takes a long time to heal the wounds, right? So the skin does not heal, right? The skin wounds does not heal. And the blood vessels are also weak. They can easily erupt and they can start bleeding, right? The blood vessels are weak and they can easily erupt. So you can write any of these points. If you have written scurvy, you get 1 point for that. And without calcium, now look, without vitamin D only, you get rickets, because not enough vitamin D means, right? Not enough vitamin D means we can't absorb the calcium in our blood, right? Vitamin D is the substance used to absorb the calcium in our blood. So no matter how much calcium you take into your body, right, if you don't have sufficient levels of vitamin B, the calcium will not be absorbed into our body and will not be deposited in our skeletal system. It will not be deposited in our bones. So there is a deficiency in calcium if there is a deficiency in vitamin D. Yes, so you will get rickets if you don't have enough calcium in your body. Not just that, you can also have weak bones, right? Weak bones, or else osteoporosis is also another condition that you can get if you don't have enough calcium. Rickets is the disease which is present in children, and you can see the legs are bowed, right? The legs have a bowed shape. Osteoporosis is the condition which is present in adults, and people with osteoporosis often have a bent body, a hunched body. Not just that, they also have bowed legs, right? They also have bowed legs. So these are the features in people having osteoporosis and rickets. But remember, they are direct causes of vitamin D deficiency. But since they're asking for calcium deficiency, we just have to write the same things which are present in vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Then they're asking, calculate the, you can use a calculator, calculate the mass in grams of lentils that a 16-year-old needs to eat each day to provide their RDA of protein. You know, the required RDA should be 100%. But how much do you get? You get around like 22%, right? From 50 grams of lentils. Yeah, from 50 grams, you get 22%. Then how much should you eat to get 100% of proteins, right? This is like, if that means this is basically in this sort of calculations, you have to, that means for 22%, you get 50 grams. For 100%, they're asking how much. In this sort of calculations, you have to divide the 50 by 22 and multiply it by 100. Because if you divide 22 by 22, you get 1%. Right? And 1% multiplied by 100, you get 100%. So here also you do the same thing. 50 you divide by 22 and you multiply it by 100. Then you can get the answer for this box. Right? So the answer that you get is 227.2727. Remember, if you get a recurring decimal value like this, you have to write it to 4DP. That means 4 decimal places, right?
Yeah.
You have to write it to 4 decimal places. Otherwise, you will not be given any mark. Or you can round it off, right? You can round it off and say it as 227 grams, right? 227 grams. So this is the way that you need to write. That means always keep it either in 4 decimal places or always round it off and give it as a whole number. So the correct mass would be around like 227 grams, right? 227 grams. Then here in this question, they are saying, describe how protein is digested in the human alimentary canal. Okay, this is actually a big theory part that you need to understand. This digestion of proteins takes place in our stomach first, right? It starts in our stomach. Afterwards, it continues in our small intestine as well, right? That means it initiates in the stomach. If you take carbohydrate digestion, it takes place in our mouth, right? Because our mouth saliva has amylase, right? So from there itself, the digestion of carbohydrates takes place. But if you take proteins, the first place where the digestion takes place is inside the stomach, because the stomach has a protein called as pepsin, right?
Yeah.
It has a protein called as pepsin. Actually, it's secreted by a cell called the chief cell, which you don't need to know, right? You don't need to know about that, right? You only need to know that the stomach cells secrete an enzyme called pepsin, right? The pepsin actually, the pepsin can digest these protein molecules into polypeptide chains, right? That means into smaller, that means it's like this, all right? So actually the proteins are built up like this. Amino acids create a peptide chain, right? Peptide chain builds up to form a polypeptide chain, and polypeptide chains build up to form a protein molecule, right? This is the sequence of forming a protein. So first of all, the proteins are broken down into the polypeptide chains, but some proteins do remain inside the stomach. Even though pepsin is there, they're not fully digested, right? So the initial digestion takes place in the stomach. Afterwards, it is carried out in the small intestine as well. Small intestine, do you know? In the small intestine, I think that diagram, yeah, right? Small intestine, can you see this structure? This is the duodenum, right? Small intestine has structure called the duodenum. It's a C-shaped curve, and can you see the pancreas, like a leaf-like structure? Pancreas is there. The yellow, the pancreas, it contains digestive juices, right? That means digestive enzymes are there. These digestive enzymes are secreted into the what? Into this duodenum, right? Duodenum is part of the small intestine. So when the digestive enzymes are secreted into the duodenum, inside this duodenum, digestion takes place. Right? Digestion of proteins, digestion of carbohydrates, digestion of fats, digestion of nucleic acids, right? All these things take place inside this duodenum. But inside the stomach, only protein digestion took place. Remember that, right? Because inside the stomach, you only have one enzyme, and that is pepsin. So only the protein digestion took place. And the protein digestion will be continued in the small intestine as well, right? So you can see you have to mention what is the enzyme which is in the small intestine as well. That enzyme, you can call it as peptidase, or else I think they have just given you a general name. If it's too hard for you to remember this word, they have given a general name called protease, right? Protease, right? So you can either write down peptidase or protease, but peptidase is that specific enzyme which is being secreted. Protease are the enzymes that does the digestion of proteins, right? So peptidase is that specific protease enzyme which is present in the small intestine. So you might wonder, for this has 3 marks, what sort of answer should you write? For that means for a question like this, yes, you have to mention the enzymes which are present, enzymes which does the digestion, right? And then you have to mention to what are these proteins being broken down. That also you should mention. So if you mention the 2 enzymes, if you mention the 2 enzymes which does this, I already showed you the name of 2 enzymes, you get 2 points. And if you write the end product of this protein digestion, you get 1 point for that, right? So altogether, you get 3 points. That's how the marks are being allocated for this question. So the first thing that you can write down is pepsin in the stomach. Pepsin in the stomach carries out the first steps of protein digestion, right? Okay, you can just write down pepsin in the stomach digests the proteins, right? Digest the proteins. Then you can write down in the small intestine. In the small intestine, there are peptidases in the small intestine. There are peptidases. The peptidase is the other enzyme which is present in the intestine, right? There are peptidases which breaks down the proteins into amino acids. You don't have to mention about this peptide, polypeptide, right? They are not in your syllabus. They are just for reference, like to explain something only we are using that. But you have to know finally the end product is amino acid, right? Which will break down the proteins to amino acid, which will break down the protein to amino acids. That's how you write a complete answer, and you get 3 marks for writing this answer down, right? It's better if you can include the pancreas secretes digestive enzyme. Like if you want to write a creative answer, you can write like that, right? Because in the exam, we don't have a marking scheme, right? But we are practicing with the marking scheme in our practice sessions, right? So you should have an idea, okay, so these are the points that they're expecting. For that, we need to have a practice also. But in the final exam, when you can be a bit creative. That means you can write down what you have learned, right? Because finally, that means you can first adjust the points, and then as a conclusion, you can write down the overall theory that you have learned, so that it makes, that means when the examiner sees it, he or she understands that you are a person who knows this theory well, right? So it creates a good expression on the examiner, right? You can see over here, they have showed a forest food web. Right, now food web, it's actually an easy thing, but there are some questions that they're asking which we have to be familiar, right? Food web, you can see, food web, it's made up of multiple food chains. This is a food chain and there are several food chains. They're asking how many secondary consumers are there in this food web. Let's count and see how many secondary consumers are there. You know, the grass and the oak tree are the producers. They are the ones which produce the food, right? That means which takes the sunlight and carries out the photosynthesis and they are the ones which produces the food. So after that, the first person to eat this food is called as the primary consumer. So grasshopper and rabbit and also squirrel, they are primary consumers, right? Grasshopper, squirrels and rabbits, they are primary consumers. But take a look. Even though squirrel is a primary consumer for the oak tree, it's not a primary consumer for the grass. It's a secondary consumer. So squirrel is a secondary consumer. And mouse. See, mouse, it's a primary consumer as well. Also, it's a secondary consumer, right? And also, you can see fox. Foxes also, can you see, if you take this food chain, the fox, and also if you take this food chain, the fox also becomes a secondary consumer. It also becomes a tertiary consumer if you consider this. If you consider this food chain, it becomes a tertiary consumer. But it's also a secondary. Yeah, it's also a secondary consumer. So the maximum number of consumers, the secondary consumers that we have is 3, right? 3. We don't have anything else, right? The maximum number of consumers, the secondary consumers we have is 3. So the answer is the C, right? It's an easy question. Right. Let's move on to the next question. Which term describes all the organisms in the food web together with their environment? Okay, so first we have to have an idea about this, about these words. That means sometimes they could give us to write the definitions as well. Even though here they are not telling us, we'll be asked to. So we should know about them. What do you mean by a community? Yeah, community means lot of populations, right? All the populations of different species. Let's take, for example, let's take the deers, right? Let's take the cows, right? Let's take the rhinoceros, right? Let's take all these populations, especially if you recall the Madagascar movie, if you have seen, they are showing a community. You can see the giraffe, right? All of these are living. All the populations of different species are living together in a habitat. That is a community. Yes. And what is an ecosystem? You know, the community of organisms where this community where it lives, it can have the abiotic conditions like this, right? That means you can see these are not abiotic. Abiotic means non-living. Can you see the non-living things like the rocks, the soil, the water? They are non-living. That makes up an ecosystem. And habitat is very simple. Yes, habitat is very simple. It's the place where an animal lives or a species live. And population means, population means organisms, right? That means organisms of a specific species, right? Not of different species. If you take humans, it's a human population. It's around like 8 billion, right? If you take the lions, that means you should only consider the lions, that population, right? So population means organisms of the same species. But here, what are they asking? They're asking all organisms in the food web together. That means they are considering organisms of different species living together. That means they're considering the community. But hold on. See, that means the food web together with the environment. Community with the environment. What do you call it? The ecosystem. Because environment means the non-living things as well, right? The rocks, the soil, the sunlight, right? All these things. So what is the final answer? The final answer is B, which is ecosystem. Right? That is ecosystem. So you can see it's an easy question. Let's do this question as well, and then we can call it a day, right? Because then it's completed. You can see the fox receives 1% of the energy present in the oak tree. If you take a look at the fox, right? It receives 1% of energy from this oak tree, which is very less, right? Because the oak tree has 100% of energy inside it, but it gets only 1%, right? But it's okay. Let's see. The fox receives 0.04% of energy present in the grass, even lesser than what is present in the oak tree. Do you know why? That is because
one consumer has only 10% of energy.
Yes, you lose 10% of energy, not just that, right? Not, you don't have to mention that 10% in this, but it's good that you remember it, right? So, but don't mention it in this answer, okay? All you need to mention, I tell you what to do, but it's really good that you remember that part, right? So you can see this fox, between the fox and the oak tree, how many consumers are in between? Only one consumer. But if you take the grass and the fox, right, and the grass and the fox, stop considering this one, they are referring to this one actually. That's why they are saying 0.04% is there. So you can see there are two consumers, right? So actually you can see these are called trophic levels. In a food chain, these are referred to as trophic levels. At each trophic level, you can see a lot of energy is being released, right? A lot of energy is being wasted. And finally, when you have two organisms in between, more energy is wasted. Fox gets the least amount of energy. But oak tree and fox, in that food chain, you can see rabbit. Only rabbit is there. So considerably less amount of energy is lost in this food chain. So the answer, you can develop it like this. Yes, you can develop the answer like this. You can develop it, you can say that there is a shorter food chain from the oak tree. Shorter food chain, because shorter the food chain, more energy is conserved, right? So shorter food chain from the oak tree to the fox. From the oak tree to the fox. Oak tree to the fox. You can do a comparison also. See, they have given a lot of lines, right? So you can do a comparison. Shorter food chain from the oak tree to the fox, but there is a longer food chain from the grass to the fox, right? So you can write down, and you mention about the 10%, right? Here the reason why you can't mention the 10% is because now if they have given some values, you can include that, right? That means if they have given the first value of the oak tree and the final value which is present in the fox, then you can do that. That means then they are referring to that then they are referring to this 10% value. But here, since they have not given the initial amount of energy or anything like that, when you say 10% is lost, at the end, it's sort of like hard for us to believe that 1% is remaining, right? Sorry, 10% is being carried out, 90% is being lost. It's sort of like, wait, give me a second. 100%, 10%, 1%, 100%, 10%, 1%, 0.1%. There isn't any issue with the fox. When you say 10%, 1% is correct, right? When you say about the 10%, it's correct about this food chain. But about this 0.04%, it's wrong. Because you can see at the end, it gets 0.1%. Right? So there is an issue with that one. That's why I asked you not to write this 10%. Right? Since this is a typical question, answer it in the typical manner. No need to be specific. Okay. So you can write down energy is lost. Energy, that means this is the first point that you get. Then you can write down two ways that the energy is lost through the food chain. You know, energy is lost from the food chain by excretion. From the food chain by excretion. That means when an organism is excreting, energy is lost. Right? Not just that. The organism doesn't consume all the things in this oak tree. Right? There are some parts which is inedible. They're throwing that part out, right? So energy is wasted in that inedible part, right? Some parts are inedible. So they're throwing that out. So that there is a wastage of energy. Not just that, some parts that they take in, they're indigestible, right? They're not digestible. So they're still there. That means they pass as feces, right? They pass as feces since they're indigestible. Remember, this egestion and excretion are two different things. Passing out of feces is not excretion, right? Excretion is passing out of urine. Feces means egestion, right? Passing out of feces means egestion, right? And the other one is respiration and movement can also result in energy loss. Respiration and movement can also result in energy loss. If you wrote at least 2 points from these points, from the points that I have given you, you can get 3 marks in total. 1 mark for this and 2 marks for this. You can get 3 marks in total, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I hope you understood what I have taught you today, right? So next day, that means if we are, that means in case, that means if you want to continue the class, it depends on you. If you want to continue the class, if you want to go for this paper discussions, we can discuss 2 hour papers within a day, within the 2 hours, right? I usually do like that, but the speed is a bit increased. And I won't be focusing much on the theory parts. I will be, but not into this much of detail, right? And also, if you want to go for theory sessions, that also you can let me know that, and do let me know how the session, that means with your feedback from the session, right? Whether it was good, whether you understood it or not. It doesn't matter whether you continue or not. Let me know your feedback, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so yeah, I'll be ending the session for today. Thank you for joining. And yeah, have a nice day, right? And work hard for your exam since it's in 2025.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I'll be ending the session.